Good evening and welcome to CYC News for the 3rd of March 2019 and the 24th of Amshir 1735 AM. I'm Bishoy Basilius. In today's headlines, Israel may have committed war crimes during Gaza protests. ISIS has been reduced to 4 square kilometers in Syria. Russian river rises to 14 meters, turning California town into an island. Australia to develop independently thinking drones. Newly discovered Alzheimer's genes show further hope for future treatments. And Real Madrid's season on the brink after 3-0 Barcelona defeat. But first to Israel, where a UN-backed independent panel has said it has reasonable grounds to believe soldiers may have committed war crimes and shot at journalists, health workers and children during protests in Gaza in 2018. Israel has rejected the report, saying its outcome had been determined before the investigation began. In its report published on Thursday, the United Nations Independent Commission of Inquiry into the protests said it had conducted 325 interviews with victims, witnesses and sources, gathered more than 8,000 documents and analysed social media and drone footage. The panel said it found reasonable grounds to believe that Israeli snipers shot at journalists, health workers, children and persons with disabilities, knowing they were clearly recognisable as such. Israel refused to take part in the inquiry, and the country's acting foreign minister Yisrael Katz rejected the UN report as theatre of the absurd and called it hostile, false and incorrect. The commission was established by a UN Human Rights Council resolution in May 2018 to investigate all alleged violations and abuses of international law during last year's protests in Gaza. It says it investigated every killing at the designated demonstration sites by the Gaza separation fence on official protest days, covering the period from the start of the protests in March until December 31. The report goes on to say that 189 Palestinians were killed during the demonstrations throughout that period. The commission found that Israel's security forces killed 183 of these protesters with live ammunition. 35 of these fatalities were children, 3 were clearly marked paramedics and 2 were clearly marked journalists. To Syria, and on a remote stretch of the Euphrates River in east of the country, the so-called Islamic State is fighting its last stand. A realm that once stretched from western Syria to the outskirts of Baghdad is, according to a senior Syrian Democratic Forces commander, a mere 4 square kilometers. The anonymous source says that with the help of artillery and airplanes, they were able to take control of the area, and that within 10 days the fight will be over. Since December, thousands of people, mostly women, children and the elderly, have fled ISIS-controlled villages in Syria, including Susa and Marashida and others. Thousands more remain inside its shrinking enclave. Those who escape end up in overcrowded, under-equipped camps in the bleak Syrian desert. A January 31 statement by the World Health Organization describes refugee children dying of hypothermia. Others tried to escape but didn't make it. In footage taken by freelance war zone cameraman Gabriel Shaim, in the surrounding villages, a soldier lifts a jumble of blankets by a wall to reveal bodies. Children, girls and boys, and 2 women. ISIS may be about to lose its last sliver of territory, but it will not disappear with it. The group has transformed and has returned back to what it was before ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi declared his so-called caliphate, a deadly insurgency in Syria and Iraq. And in far-flung corners of the globe, Nigeria, Libya, Egypt's Sinai Peninsula, Afghanistan and the Philippines, ISIS's black banner still flies. This battle on the banks of the Euphrates is an important one, but the war isn't over. To the United States now, where the Northern California town of Guerneville has been turned into an island as the Russian River has risen to just under 14 meters. Sonoma County Emergency Operations Center spokesman Barry Dugan said the river crested at 13.8 meters on Wednesday night, leaving the community with 4,500 residents isolated. The roadways leading into the town along and across the river have been cut off, and with their homes surrounded by floodwaters, the residents have been moving around on kayaks and canoes. Roughly 2,000 homes and buildings have flooded to some degree, and so far 59 people have been rescued. On some streets, the water reached the windows of cars, and on one street, the water reached the rooflines of a few buildings. County officials have issued an emergency declaration and have requested Governor Gavin Newsom issue a state of emergency to help local authorities by expanding available resources. Officials expected the river to drop precipitously over Thursday and Friday. Over to Australia now, where on Wednesday, Boeing's local subsidiary announced plans to make a jet drone with artificial intelligence that can act as a loyal wingman for manned jet fighters. In a statement from Boeing on what it calls the air-powered teaming system, it details how the drone's software will enable it to fly independently or in support of manned aircraft while still maintaining a safe distance. The 11.5-meter-long single-engine drone with a range of more than 3,200 kilometers will be able to engage in electronic warfare as well as intelligence, reconnaissance and surveillance missions and swap quickly between those roles. The company showed off a model of the drone dubbed the Loyal Wingman Advanced Development Program at the Australia International Airshow in Melbourne on Wednesday, with an introduction from Australian Minister of Defence Christopher Pyne. Accompanying animations showed 3 of the prospective drones flying alongside a Royal Australian Air Force FA-18 fighter jet, as well as an E-7 Wedgetail airborne early warning and control aircraft. In some health news, an analysis of the genetic makeup of more than 94,000 people in the United States and Europe that are clinically diagnosed with Alzheimer's led to the discovery of 4 new genetic variants that increase risk for the neurodegenerative disease. The study found that these genes, along with other previously identified, appear to work in tandem to control bodily functions that affect disease development. Neurologist Dr. Richard Isaacson, who directs the Alzheimer's Prevention Clinic at Weill Cornell Medicine, but was not involved in the new research, says it is a powerful study and a step forward in the understanding of the disease. Finding the new genes also allows clinicians to one day target them with therapeutic interventions, and it will give a greater insight into potential causes of Alzheimer's. Heather Snyder, the Alzheimer's Association's Senior Director of Medical and Scientific Operations, who was also not involved in the new research, believes the study's findings will not change anyone's day-to-day life or medical practice anytime soon. And in sport, Real Madrid's season is on the brink. Los Blancos were not overwhelmed by their opponent on Wednesday. In fact, Real dominated El Clasico. Lionel Messi was quiet. Barcelona rode its luck, but though the Catalans only had 4 shots during the entire match, Real was still humbled 3-0. And against your biggest rivals, that's tough to take. Barcelona's win over Real, thanks to a Luis Suarez brace and a Rafael Varane own goal in the Copa del Rey semi-final second leg, also increases the prospect of the Madrid club ending the season without a trophy. Real is 9 points behind leaders Barcelona in La Liga, and with a league meeting against the Catalans over the weekend, that gap could increase. Santiago Solari, their second manager of the season, put his bravest face on as he analysed his side's 4-1 aggregate cup defeat to Barcelona, saying, "They applied themselves well and with lots of energy, but weren't decisive enough." Real's Copa del Rey exit leaves the Champions League, a tournament where they are 3-time defending champions, as the only realistic chance of silverware in this tumultuous campaign. And that's all for CYC News. A reminder that you can watch this news bulletin again throughout the week on YouTube. I'm Bishoy Basilius from the CYC studios in Sydney, Australia. Have a good night.